There's a lie that comfortable families tell themselves, that blood can't be a stranger, that the people you raised, the ones you taught to ride a bike and co-signed a first car for, could never stand in the middle of everything you built and see only what it might fetch on a Tuesday. I believed that lie for 67 years. It took one weekend to cure me of it. And I want to be honest with you before we go a step further, because this story only works if you trust me. My son said something to me that week. 6 words. He said them the way you'd tell a man where to park. I'll give you those words when we get to them, because you should hear them land the way I heard them, cold and casual and rehearsed. But here's the part he didn't know, the part he couldn't have known, because somewhere along the way he stopped asking me questions around the year his mother got sick, I think. When I became less of a father to him and more of a resource he was waiting on. What he didn't know was that I'd already made a decision about this house, months earlier. At a kitchen table 2 hours south of here, across from a man I've known since we were both 16 and too dumb to be scared of anything. But we'll get there. Stay with me. I want you to see the whole thing. It was Sunday, February 23rd, 6:52 in the evening, 6 days before $140,000 came due, a debt my son was sure I knew nothing about. Welcome to Wise Dad Stories. Pull up a chair and settle in. This one goes somewhere, and you'll want to be here for how it ends. Drop a comment and tell me what town you're watching from. Hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe. My name is Warren Halloran. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 31 of those years as a union pipe fitter, cold job sites, hot pipe, the kind of work that leaves your hands looking like a map of everywhere you've been. I retired at 62 with a pension I'd fought for and a back that files its own complaints. Weekends, for 26 years, I built wheelchair ramps with the men's group out of Street Brendan's, free of charge for anybody in the county who couldn't get down their own front steps anymore. I've built ramps for veterans, for widows, for a 9-year-old boy with a chair the size of a small car. I say that not to sound like a saint. I say it because I want you to understand the kind of man I was raised to be, so you'll understand why what happened knocked me flat. I built things. That was who I was. That was who I am. And the biggest thing I ever built was the house on Rutherford Road, in Ashford. I bought that lot in 1983 for almost nothing, because nobody wanted it too much slope, too many trees. Colleen and I put up the frame ourselves that first summer, the 2 of us and a borrowed nail gun and a radio that only got 1 station. I poured the back steps. I hung every door. When our daughter Grace was born, I built the nursery. When our son Trevor came along 4 years later, I framed out the 2nd bedroom in a weekend so he'd have his own. Colleen used to run her hand along the door frames when she walked through the house, every time, like she was saying hello to it. A house remembers whose hands built it, Warren, she'd tell me. Don't ever let anybody tell you a house is just walls. Write that down. A house remembers whose hands built it. You're going to hear it again. Colleen passed 3 years ago this spring. Ovarian cancer. The quiet, thieving kind that doesn't announce itself until it's already unpacked its bags. She fought it for 14 months. She lost her hair and never once lost her sense of humor. And the last thing she asked me to do, the very last, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and the lilies Grace kept bringing, was to keep the warming shelter open. Colleen started that shelter 20 years ago, out of the basement of the old Methodist church. In our county, the winters bite, and there are always folks with nowhere warm to be. She'd stay till midnight some nights, just so somebody wouldn't freeze. Nobody gets left in the cold, she'd say. Not on my watch. Remember that too. Nobody gets left in the cold. So there's your loyal figure and your lost love, all in one woman. And there's a second loyal one, so let me name her properly. My daughter Grace. She's 41 now. She's a hospice nurse, which tells you most of what you need to know about her heart. She does for dying strangers what a lot of people won't do for their own parents. She lives 2 hours south, in a small apartment, drives up on her days off to check on me, fills my freezer, fixes the things I pretend I don't need help fixing anymore. In 3 years of me being alone in that house, Grace never once asked me for $1. Never once mentioned the word inheritance. When your father is grieving, she said to me once, you don't hand him a bill. Now let me tell you about my son. Trevor is 39. Charming. I'll give him that. And I say it now, because it matters later. Because charm is just competence, pointed at getting what it wants. He was the kid who could talk his way out of a grounding, grew into the man who could talk his way into a loan. He got into real estate about 8 years back, flipping houses. And for a while it went well enough that he never stopped telling us how well it was going. The boat, the truck, the vacations posted for everyone to admire. Danielle, his wife, curated all of it. Danielle has a way of looking at a room like she's already listed it. I noticed that about her the first time she came to Sunday dinner. She walked into my kitchen and her eyes went straight to the ceilings, the crown molding I'd cut by hand, and she said, God, Warren, do you have any idea what this place would go for? I laughed it off. Colleen didn't. That woman priced our home before she said hello to your son. Colleen told me that night, drying a dish. Watch her. I should have. Here's the line I want you to hold on to, the one that reveals everything in hindsight. It was maybe 2 years ago, at a barbecue in my backyard. Trevor'd had a couple beers, and one of the flips had gone sideways, and he didn't know I was around the corner by the grill. I heard him say to Danielle, low, relax. Worst case, we've always got the old man's house sitting there doing nothing. The old man's house, doing nothing. 2 people I'd built rooms for, standing in a yard I'd landscaped by hand. Calling my life's work a fallback. I told myself I'd misheard. That's the thing about loving your kids. You'll perjure yourself to keep the peace. And I have to admit my own failing here, because this story isn't just about what they did. It's about what I allowed. For a long time, I believed love meant never keeping score. I've since learned that some people are counting on exactly that. They count on you, not counting. I stopped keeping the peace the day I started keeping my eyes open, but that's later. Here's how the trap was built, and it was a trap dressed up as a kindness, the way the good ones always are. Last fall, Trevor started calling more. Warm calls. How are you holding up, Dad? You shouldn't be rattling around that big place alone, Dad. And then, gently, the pitch. What if they moved in? Just for a while. The kids could grow up with their grandpa. Danielle could cook. He could handle the yard, take the maintenance off my hands. We'd be a family under one roof again, the way Mom would have wanted. The way Mom would have wanted. He actually said that. He used his dead mother as a crowbar. And God help me, I wanted it. I was lonely. The house was too quiet. I'd taken to leaving the porch light on all night, the way Colleen always had, because a dark house felt like a house that had given up. So when my son offered to fill it with grandchildren, I heard my wife's voice saying, nobody should be left in the cold, and I said yes. Now pay attention to this next part, because it's the part they were counting on you to miss. About a month before they moved in, Trevor came by alone one evening with a folder. Estate paperwork, he called it. Just being responsible, Dad. Getting your affairs in order so it's not a nightmare later. This is a quitclaim deed. It just puts my name on the house alongside yours, so there's no probate, no lawyers, no mess when the time comes. Everybody does it now. He slid it across my own kitchen table with a pen already uncapped. And here's where I want you to understand something about grief. When you've buried the person who used to check your work, you get careful. Not smart, necessarily careful. Colleen was the one who read the fine print in our marriage, and I found that the more I missed her, the more I tried to be her. So instead of signing my son's paper that night, I said what she would have said. I said, let me sleep on it. Trevor didn't like that. I watched his jaw do a thing, but he smiled and left the folder. The next morning I got in my truck and drove 2 hours south, to a kitchen table that wasn't mine. I told you we'd get there. We're almost there. But first you need to see what they did to me inside those walls, because a gentle man doesn't stop being gentle over nothing. They gave me a reason. Let me show you how they built it, one cold degree at a time. They moved in the second weekend of January, and for about 3 weeks, it was almost everything I'd hoped for. Lily, that's my granddaughter, She's 9, took to sitting with me on the back steps in the cold, both of us bundled up, watching for the first birds. She's got Colleen's laugh. Caught me off guard the first time, that laugh coming out of a face that small. There's a 2-year-old too, little Danny, all sticky hands and dead sprints. For 3 weeks I had a full house and I thanked God for it. Then the temperature dropped, inside I mean. It started small, the way these things do. My chair got moved to make room for Danielle's sectional. Fine. My tools went from the basement to the shed to make a playroom. Fine. My Sunday paper started showing up already read, already refolded wrong. Fine, 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 I kept saying fine, because a man who complains about his chair looks small, and I didn't want to be the small man in my own house. But watch how they escalate, because they always escalate. They test the fence before they take the field. The refrigerator was next. I opened it one morning and everything I liked was gone, replaced with Danielle's groceries, labeled, some of them, with little pieces of tape. These do not touch. In my refrigerator. In the house Colleen and I built with a borrowed nail gun. Then the thermostat. I came down one cold morning, and it was set to 58. When I nudged it up, Danielle appeared like she'd been waiting. We're trying to be mindful of the bills, Warren. Trevor and I are covering a lot now. They weren't covering anything. I found that out later. I was still paying every bill on that house, right down to the water. But she said it with such practiced sympathy that I apologized. I apologized to a woman for being cold in my own home. Colleen's voice again, quiet as anything. Nobody gets left in the cold. And then came Sunday, February 23rd. 6:52 in the evening. I remember because I'd just come in from the shed, cold to the bone, and Trevor and Danielle were waiting at the kitchen table like a small tribunal. There was a diagram on the table. An actual diagram drawn on the back of a Chinese takeout menu. It showed the house, my house divided up. Master bedroom, Trevor and Danielle. My old room, the one I'd shared with my wife for 38 years. The kids. And there was an arrow, drawn in ballpoint, pointing out to the garage. So, Dad, Trevor said, and here it is, the 6 words, exactly as he said them, easy as telling a man where to park. You'll be more comfortable in the garage. I didn't say anything, so he kept going, because men like my son can't stand a silence they didn't script. It's practically a studio apartment out there. We'll get you a space heater, a little fridge. You'll have your privacy. The kids need the bedrooms, Dad. They're growing. And honestly, the stairs at your age, we worry about you on the stairs. At my age, I built those stairs. I've carried lumber up worse. Danielle put her hand on my arm, feather light. We just want everyone to be comfortable, Warren. And I looked at that arrow pointing out to the cold concrete where I keep my table saw, and I understood, finally and completely, that I was not a father in that room. I was an obstacle they were relocating. Now a lesser story would have me flip that table, yell, throw them out on the spot. But I want to teach you something my 31 years on job sites taught me, and it's this. Never let the man who's about to lose know that you know. You don't warn a leak before you've closed the valve. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than the funeral some ways. I smiled, and I said, let me sleep on it. The same 4 words I'd said to the deed. Trevor relaxed. I watched the relief move through his shoulders. He thought he'd won, and I let him think it, because I needed 3 more days. Something was coming that none of them had drawn on the back of that menu. The tell came from Lily. The loyal ones are always the ones who don't know they're loyal yet. It was that Tuesday. I was making her a grilled cheese, one of the few kitchen operations I hadn't been quietly edged out of, and she was doing homework at the counter. And out of nowhere, in that offhand way kids drop bombs, she said, Grandpa, when we're rich, can I have a horse? I kept the spatula moving. When are we going to be rich, sweetheart? When Mommy sells the house. She says the sign's going in the yard Saturday. Lily said it like she was reading a grocery list. There's a lady coming Thursday to take pictures. Mommy said I have to keep my room clean so it looks nice for the pictures. Are we moving, Grandpa? Where's your room going to be? Stay with me here, because I need you to feel the floor go out the way I did. The sign was going in the yard Saturday, photos on Thursday. Somebody had already been in my house measuring, planning, staging a house that, as far as anyone in that kitchen knew, belonged to me. And here's the counter I want you to keep, because it starts here and it climbs. My son owed money. I didn't have the number yet, but I would soon, and it was ugly. $140,000, due March 1st, to a lender who does not send Christmas cards. A hard money loan on a flip that never flipped. 140,000, that's where it started. By the end of that week, with the interest they don't tell you about up front, it was 142,300. It would have kept climbing. He didn't need my house someday. He needed my house now, before March 1st. And so the man who'd talked about probate and being responsible had, in truth, already put a for sale sign in a truck in the driveway. Waiting on a signature he was sure he'd get once I was tucked away in the garage where I couldn't see the mail. If you're still with me, do me one small favor: subscribe. It's free, and it's how stories like this keep reaching the people who need them. Now, let me tell you what I did next. I finished Lily's grilled cheese. I cut it into triangles, the way she likes. I told her a horse was a lot of responsibility, and we'd see. Then I went out to the shed, my shed now, apparently, the exile's quarters, and I sat down on an overturned bucket in the cold, and I did something I hadn't let myself do since the funeral. I cried. Just for a minute, for the version of my son I'd built rooms for. And then I dried my face, and I got very, very calm. The kind of calm that isn't peace yet but knows the way there. On a job site we call it finding the shutoff. You stop staring at the water. You go find the valve. I had one more thing to check before I made my call. Because a wise man doesn't act on a 9-year-old's grocery list. He confirms. Wednesday morning, while Trevor was out and Danielle was on a call in the other room, I did something I'm not proud of and would do again in a heartbeat. I looked at the mail. All of it. The pile Danielle had started collecting to keep things organized. There, between a catalog and a hydro bill, was an envelope from a real estate brokerage. Addressed to Danielle Halloran, at my address. I opened it. It was a copy of a listing agreement. A contract, signed by Danielle, dated the 3rd week of December. A full month before they'd even carried a box through my door, engaging a realtor to sell the property at 114 Rutherford Road. My property. Listed at $489,000. With a handwritten note from the agent, cheerful as a knife. Once we get the deed squared away, we can go live Friday. So excited for you guys. Once we get the deed squared away. They had signed a contract to sell my house before they'd unpacked a single suitcase. The estate paperwork, the just being responsible, the garage, the space heater, the 58 degrees, all of it was choreography. Move the old man out of the master bedroom and into the concrete, where the mail doesn't come, where the light's bad, where he won't see the sign in his own yard until it's too late. Get him to sign a deed he thinks is about probate. Sell the house out from under his feet. Cover the 140,000. Pocket the rest. I want to be careful here, because I've told you I felt no rage, and that's true, and it might sound impossible. Let me explain it the only way I can. When you've fitted pipe for 31 years, you learn that anger is a bad tool. It shakes the hand. You don't fix a leak angry. You fix it clear. And standing in that hallway with my son's plan in my hands, the anger just drained out of me. What was left was so clean it felt almost like relief, like grief that had finally found somewhere to go. I put the letter back exactly where I found it. I refolded it wrong, the way Danielle refolds my paper, so she'd never know. Then I went out to my truck, and I drove to the end of Rutherford Road where the cell signal's good, and I made one call. Nathan Cole and I met when we were 16, both of us bagging groceries at a ShopRite that's a parking lot now. He went to school, became a lawyer, real estate and estates, the unglamorous kind that actually protects people. I stayed in the trades, but we never lost each other. He was a pallbearer at Colleen's funeral. I was best man at both his weddings, which is a story for another day. And Nathan Cole was the man at the kitchen table 2 hours south, the one I drove to see the morning after Trevor slid me that deed. Because here's what I did back in the fall, and here's the card the whole room was missing. When Trevor handed me that quitclaim deed, I didn't sleep on it and sign it. I took it straight to Nathan. He read it in about 9 seconds, set it down, took off his glasses and said, "Warren, this doesn't add your son alongside you. Read it. This transfers the house to him. Full stop. You sign this, and by Ohio law he owns your home, and he can do anything he wants with it, including put you out. Who told you this was about probate?" "My son," I said. Nathan looked at me for a long moment, the way old friends do when they're deciding how much truth you can hold that day. "Then your son," he said gently, "is not telling you the truth." So that day, back in the fall, at Nathan's table, we didn't just tear up Trevor's deed. We did the thing Colleen would have done. We got careful. Nathan set up a revocable living trust. The house on Rutherford Road went into it legally, properly, recorded at the county. I'm the trustee while I'm living. I can live there, sell it, do whatever I please, for as long as I draw breath. But the house can't be transferred out from under me by anyone. Not with a deed. Not with a signature they slide across a table. Not ever. And I named a successor, not Trevor, Grace. My daughter, who never once mentioned the word inheritance, gets the house when I'm gone with one carve-out I insisted on, written in plain language, a fund for Lily's education, so that no matter what her parents did, that little girl with her grandmother's laugh would have a way up in this world. And there was one more clause, the one I care about most. We'll get to it. I signed those papers in November, recorded before Thanksgiving. Months before Danielle ever signed a listing agreement to sell a house she had no right to sell. So when I stood at the end of Rutherford Road that Wednesday with my phone in my cold hand, and Nathan picked up on the second ring, all I had to say was this: "Nate, it's time. They've listed the house. There's a for sale sign coming Saturday, and a photographer coming Thursday. Can you be here Saturday morning?" There was a pause. Then my oldest friend said the words, "I'll carry to my own grave. Warren, I'll bring everything, and I'll bring it in person. Let them have their showing. Let them have their showing. I want you to notice something. I never raised my voice. I never confronted my son in that kitchen. I made one call to a man I've trusted for 50 years. Because the loudest thing in the world is a quiet man who did his paperwork. Thursday, the photographer came, a nice young woman with a wide-angle lens, and Danielle floating behind her saying, "And this is the great room, about the room where I taught my kids to walk." I stayed out of the way. I'd been given a bucket in the shed, remember? I sat on it and let them stage my life. Friday, the listing went live. Lily showed me on Danielle's tablet, proud as anything. "Look, Grandpa, our house is famous." And there it was. $489,000. 31 professional photographs of everything Colleen and I built, described by a stranger as a rare offering with timeless charm. The counter in my head ticked over. Photos Thursday, live Friday, showing Saturday. The balloon payment, March 1st, $142,300 and climbing. The machine my son had built was running exactly on schedule. And so was mine. And the showings came in fast. That's the detail I want you to hold because it climbed, and I counted every rung. I heard Danielle in the kitchen Friday night, giddy, reading the requests off her phone to Trevor. One family wanted Saturday at 10, then a second make it 2. By the time I went to bed, the number was 3. By Saturday's first light, it was 6. By the time the sun was full up over Rutherford Road, it was 9. 1, 3, 6, 9. It rose all night like water in a basement, and every rung was a stranger coming to walk the rooms where my children learned to walk, to open the closets. Colleen organized, to put a price on a life I raised with a borrowed nail gun. 9 families, coming to bid on a house that was never, not for one single day, my son's to sell. Friday night, I did something small that I need you to see. I went out onto the front porch, banished as I was. I still had the porch, and I changed the bulb in the porch light. It had been flickering. Colleen always kept that light burning all night, every night, so nobody coming up Rutherford Road in the dark would ever feel they'd arrived somewhere unwelcome. I put in a new bulb, a bright one, and I left it on. Because Saturday, somebody was coming up my walk in the cold, and I wanted the light on for him. Stay with me. Here's where it turns. Saturday morning, 9:40 a.m. The first of 9 showings was booked for 10. Danielle had the house glowing, candles lit, coffee brewing for effect, the good stuff, not the 58-degree austerity I'd been living under. Trevor was in his best sweater, the confident one. Lily had been marched around to fluff pillows. Even little Danny had been zipped into a clean outfit. They were a portrait of a family with a home to sell. At 9:52, a car pulled into the driveway. Danielle clapped her hands. That's early. They must be eager, Trevor. Get the door. Be charming. Trevor opened the front door with his best flip-a-house smile. And there stood Nathan Cole, gray overcoat, leather folder under his arm, the porch light catching his glasses. Behind him, coming up the walk, a young woman I didn't recognize, a court process server. It turned out, though she looked like she could have been the buyer. And behind her, easing out of the passenger seat, my daughter Grace, whom I'd called Thursday night and told just enough. Trevor's smile faltered. He didn't know Nathan, but some animal part of him knew a leather folder walking up his walk on the morning of his showing was not a buyer. Can I help you? Trevor said. You must be Trevor, Nathan said, pleasant as Sunday. I'm Nathan Cole. I'm your father's attorney. May I come in? He's expecting me. I stepped into the front hall then, from the shed door, in from the cold, in my work coat, and I watched my son's face do the arithmetic. Dad, he said, what is this? We have a showing in 8 minutes. I know, I said. I read the listing. Beautiful photos. Danielle had come in from the kitchen, and I want to describe her face precisely, because it's the face of someone whose entire scheme is recalculating in real time. She looked at Nathan's folder. She looked at me. And she did the thing guilty people do. She went on offense. Warren, whatever this is, it's not a good time. We have buyers coming. You can't just… Danielle. Nathan's voice never rose. He simply opened the folder on the hall table next to the bowl where Colleen used to keep her keys. I think you'll want to hear this before your buyers arrive. It concerns them too. It would be a shame for someone to make an offer on a house that isn't for sale. It absolutely is for sale, Danielle snapped. It's listed. We have a signed agreement. You have a signed agreement, Nathan agreed, and slid one document out, her own listing contract, signed by you, in December. Engaging a broker to sell the property at 114 Rutherford Road for $489,000. He looked up. Only there's a problem with that, and it's a serious one. You can't sell a house you don't own, and neither can your husband. The room went very still. Even Danny went still, the way small children do when the air changes. It's my father's house, Trevor said. And there, did you catch it? My father's house. Not ours. Not the family's. In the crunch, the truth came out of him. He knew whose house it was the whole time. He knew, and he chose it anyway. It was your father's house, Nathan said. Now it belongs to the Halloran Family Trust recorded at the county in November, 3 weeks before your wife signed that listing. He laid the trust documents down, one after another, calm as a man dealing cards. Warren is the trustee. He alone controls this property. No deed transfers it. No signature you obtain from him transfers it because he doesn't hold it as an individual anymore. The house is protected. It has been since before you moved in. Trevor turned to me, and for 1 second I saw the boy I framed a bedroom for in a weekend. Dad, you set this up? Behind my back? And that's when the calm in me finally spoke. Behind your back? I said. Son, you handed me a deed and told me it was about probate. You lied to my face at that table, I pointed, the table your mother and I ate at for 38 years. You wanted me to sign my house away thinking I was doing something responsible. So no, I didn't do anything behind your back. I just declined to walk into the trap in front of my face. There's a difference. And someday, I hope you'll be honest enough to know it. You put me in the garage, I said, and my voice never went above the level I'm using now. You drew an arrow on a takeout menu, pointing me out to the concrete, so I wouldn't see the sign go up in my own yard. You planned to sell the house I built with my hands, that your mother ran her fingers along every single day, to cover a debt you never had the guts to tell me about. $140,000, Trevor. Due March 1st. Danielle's head snapped toward Trevor. How does he know about... And there it was. She hadn't known I knew. And now she knew that even he hadn't told her he'd been found out. The whole thing came apart at the seams, right there in my front hall, and I didn't lay a hand on any of it. 9 families got a text from the realtor that morning. Showing canceled. All 9. Because the house they'd lined up to bid on had never, not for one single hour, been for sale. Now here's the verdict. And I want you to understand this is the part that separates a wise man from a bitter one. Bitterness burns the house down with everyone in it. Wisdom decides who gets to stay. I turned to Nathan. Read them the last clause, the one I asked you to put in. Nathan found the page. At the direction of the trustee. He read, in memory of Colleen Halloran, the trust establishes an annual grant, the Colleen Fund, to the Ashford Community Warming Shelter, dedicated first to the replacement and maintenance of the shelter's furnace, so that, in the words of the trustee, nobody gets left in the cold. I looked at my son when Nathan read that. I wanted him to hear it, because the day they set my thermostat to 58 degrees and told me to be mindful, I decided that whatever happened, the answer to this house wasn't going to be more coldness. It was going to be heat, given away, in her name. Every winter, for as long as this trust stands, somewhere in this county, a person who has nothing will be warm because my son tried to leave me in the cold, and I turned it into the opposite. That's the tribute. That's what the house is for now. Then I looked at Grace, my daughter, standing quiet by the door, the way she always stands, not needing to be the center of anything. Grace gets this house, I said, when I'm gone. Not because I'm punishing you, Trevor, because she's the one who kept showing up when there was nothing in it for her. And there's a fund inside it, sealed off, for Lily, for college, so that no matter what happens between the grown-ups in this family, that little girl has a way up. She has her grandmother's laugh. She deserves a running start. Lily didn't understand all of it, but she understood her name, and she came and stood next to me, and I put my arm around her, and I felt Colleen in the room so strong, I nearly lost my calm right there. I did not throw my son out on the street. I want you to hear that clearly, because you might have wanted me to. I told Trevor and Danielle they had 30 days to find their own place. Nathan had the notice ready proper, legal, humane. Not the sheriff, not that day. 30 days. But I told Trevor one more thing, and I meant it as much as I've ever meant anything. I walked him out onto the porch, under Colleen's light, away from Danielle and the lawyers and the children, just the 2 of us in the cold he'd tried to give me. The debt is yours, I said. I won't cover it. If I paid it, I'd be teaching you that the trap works if you set it well enough, and I love you too much to teach you that. You're going to have to face those men and that number yourself, and it's going to be hard, and I'm sorry it's going to be hard. He wouldn't look at me. But listen to me now. This door, I put my hand on my own front door, the one I hung in 1983, is not locked to you forever. Your mother's rule was that nobody gets left in the cold, and that includes you. When you're ready to sit at that kitchen table and tell me the truth, all of it, the debt, the lies, the arrow on the menu, when you can do that as a man and not a salesman, you knock on this door, and I'll answer it. But you have to walk up the steps yourself. I'm not building you a ramp this time. Some things a man has to climb on his own. He stood there a long moment. Then he said the only true thing he'd said in months. He said, "I'm sorry, Dad." Quiet. No angle in it. And I chose to believe there was a real person somewhere under all that charm who meant it. Then I went back inside my house and shut the door, and I left the porch light on for him, bright, all night. They were gone in 3 weeks, not 30 days. Danielle couldn't stand to be in a house she'd tried to steal and lost. The debt I heard through Grace that Trevor had to declare bankruptcy, and that the hard money men took the truck and the boat, and that it was as ugly as I feared. I didn't celebrate it. You don't celebrate your child's hard winter. You just leave the light on and pray it teaches him something. Lily comes to stay with me now, most weekends. Trevor drives her up, and lately he doesn't just drop her off. Lately he's been coming in, sitting at that kitchen table. Twice now he's told me the truth about something without me having to pull it out of him. It's slow. Trust rebuilds slower than it breaks, like a house. It takes longer to raise than to knock down. But he's climbing the steps, on his own, and I'm watching him do it. Grace still drives up on her days off. Last month I caught her running her hand along the doorframe in the hall, the way her mother used to, and I had to go stand in the kitchen a minute. The warming shelter got its new furnace in October. There's a little plaque by the door now, the Colleen Fund. Nobody gets left in the cold. I go down some nights and just sit and watch folks come in out of the dark and get warm, and I think about a woman who ran her hand along every doorframe she passed. A house remembers whose hands built it. She was right about that, my Colleen. This house remembers. It remembers the frame we raised with a borrowed nail gun and a radio that got one station. It remembers a nursery and a bedroom built in a weekend, and 38 years of a marriage, and 14 months of a fight she lost with a smile. It remembers being asked to become a payday and refusing. And it remembers the night a man tried to move his father to the garage and learned that the quietest man in the house was the one who'd already done the paperwork. So let me leave you with the thing I know now that I didn't know at 6:52 on that cold February evening. I told you at the start that I believed a lie that blood can't be a stranger. Here's the truth. I traded it for. Blood isn't loyalty. Loyalty is loyalty. The people who are family are the ones who show up when there's nothing in it for them, and sometimes they share your last name, and sometimes they've just been standing quietly by your door the whole time, waiting to be seen. Name them out loud. Give them the house. Give them the fund. Give them the running start. And to the ones who'd move you to the garage, leave the door unlocked and the light on, and let them find the steps themselves. Wisdom is just the scars we were paying attention to. If this story reached you, if you've got someone in your life who shows up, or you're trying to be that someone, hit like, subscribe, and tell me about them in the comments. They deserve to be named out loud. And as always, thank you for being part of Wise Dad Stories. I'll see you on the next one.